Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's provider information session. We'll give it just another minute. I see that more attendees are joining us. David, if you could advance to the next slide. If you need interpretation this evening, you can select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. You may need to select more if your screen is small. You can select your language and we will give folks a few minutes to get connected. If you are joining on Facebook this evening, welcome. We are monitoring the chat there, so feel free to ask any questions in the comment section. We will also use the Q&A box here on Zoom, so you can locate that at the bottom of your screen as well. The chat is off tonight, but Q&A is open. And David, you can go to the next slide. Our agenda for this evening, we are going to talk about the DELC strategic plan. We will hear from Whitney and Danae about the Child Care Infrastructure Fund opportunity, and then we have some general agency and program updates that we will review. And with that, I'll hand it over to David Mandel, who is our Chief of Policy and Research, Government Affairs, who's going to walk us through the strategic plan. Thanks for being here, David.
Well, and thank you for having me here this evening. We are just we just recently reached the first anniversary of Department of Early Learning and Care, affectionately known as DELC, as being its own standalone agency. And one of our tasks this year was to put together the very first DELC strategic plan. This is a requirement of the governor, but it's also a really important opportunity to put on paper what are those priorities for the next 5 years that we as an agency really need to focus on in doing our work. What I'd really most likely like to do tonight, though, is also say a huge thank you to everyone and any of you who provided us with feedback and input into the development of the strategic plan that we are calling Grow Oregon Together. And I think there's really a strong emphasis on that word together. So as part of the development of this plan, we conducted surveys, provided opportunities for folks within DELC to provide input, but also opportunities for you through some of these provider information sessions, but also through outreach to our R&Rs, our early learning hubs, our Tribal Nation partners to provide input. We'll put into the chat a link to where you can find more details and the actual copy of the strategic plan, and really encourage you to take a look at it and really hope that you see that your voice and input reflected in that plan. Just to skip a little bit ahead, one of the additional important requirements, but also really important for us as an agency, was also to develop a DEI action plan. And I'll be talking about both of those together tonight because we really do see those as integrated and important documents working together to really provide us that direction of where we need to focus our work and effort over the next 5 years. What I'm really mostly going to do tonight, though, in my little bit of time with you, is just give you a high-level overview of what's in the plan. The plan is Grow Oregon Together is organized around six goals. One of them is access, really focused on what services that DELC can provide that families have access. So making sure that families have access to high quality, culturally responsive, inclusive, developmentally appropriate, and affordable early learning and care that meets their needs. Second goal focuses on tribal sovereignty. As a new agency, we really recognize how important it is to put in front and center that we are working closely with the tribal nations in Oregon and doing so in a way that recognizes and is really consistent with their sovereignty. Third goal focuses on infants and toddlers. We know that historically, investments in early childhood have often focused on preschool age children. And we also know that infant and toddler care is the most expensive in the state and the hardest to find. And so, really important to call out the importance of strategic investments and supports for families with the youngest children. And I think that's something we also heard from you, from families, and from partners across the state. Fourth goal is really around the early learning workforce. Really, the importance of the work that all of you do, and our obligations to be there to be supporting you in that work, whether it's around professional learning or other supports. And then fifth goal focuses on relationships. There's a lot actually packed into this goal. Um, Thinking about both how we work really effectively with our partner agencies, but also how we work really effectively with community organizations and hear from community and really partner in communities in meaningful and empowering ways. And then finally, foundations. This is a goal that I think is more internally looking at DELC, but I think is also really fundamental to our obligations to how we work with all of you. As a new agency, it's really important that we get our organizational infrastructure working well so that we are providing the best customer service so that when you call up, you're not on hold, or when someone picks up the phone, you actually get an answer to your question. That if there's a payment coming from us, that you get that payment timely, that we're able to gather data, but also uh, analyze that data and share that back out. So, um, um, well, that foundational piece, I think, is internally focused. It's really about making sure we're doing that work on our own house, so that we can do the best job we can to support all of you and families across Oregon. I'm not going to go through the entire plan tonight because it is pretty long, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a feel for what's underneath those high-level goals. So this is just a look at goal 4 that's focused on the workforce. So what you'll see is under each of those goals, if you go into the plan, there are more specific objectives. So the workforce objective, includes multiple accessible pathways uh, exist to enter and grow within the early learning workforce. Also, that the early learning and childcare workforce is recognized and compensated as professionals. And then you'll see under each of those objectives is even much more specific strategies that we've identified that we need to take to get closer to those objectives. We've really tried to also have a balance in this plan between um, uh, work that's already underway and that we're committed to and that we have the resources for, but also work that we recognize is going to be more aspirational, is going to require additional investments and support from many others beyond DELC. I'll just use that. I'll use objective 4.2. The early learning and childcare workforce is recognized and compensated as professionals. Super important objective for DELC. And we know that to really achieve this objective, significant public investments are going to need to be made, and that requires many folks beyond DELC coming together around those. So again, this is just another one of those objectives and strategies. All early learning and childcare programs have access to professional learning supports within Objective 4. And again, for each of the goals, if you go to the actual plan, you'll see these more detailed objectives and strategies outlined. As I mentioned in the beginning, at the same time that DELC developed and launched the Grow Oregon Together strategic plan, we've also been working and launched the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan. And the DEI action plan is really grounded in DELC's commitment to equity, our commitment to dismantling systems of oppression and harm that create disparities for communities who are historically and institutionally excluded. Similarly to Grow Oregon Together, the DEI action plan is organized around 4 high-level goals. One, to establish strong leadership to eradicate racial and other forms of disparities at DELC. Goal 2, to build capacity and capacity of social equity principles throughout all of DELC. Goal 3, to strengthen relationships internally at DELC and externally with all communities. And goal 4, to improve quality and access to services and programs while tracking measurable goals. And similarly to the strategic plan, underneath these goals are more specific objectives as well as more specific strategies. We're also deeply committed to these being living documents. So the real work isn't going into writing and publishing the documents, it's to making them a living reality. And as part of that, we are committed to developing measures that we will be tracking, holding ourselves accountable, sharing with the legislature, but also sharing with all of you. And also, I think most importantly, we really also want to be coming back to you both on the strategic plan and the DEI action plan of this is what we've been doing. Here are the things that we've said that we would do. Here is what we've been able to accomplish. What are you also hearing and seeing on the ground in terms of these strategies and actions? So again, this is just really the beginning of all of this work, and you do have our commitment that we will continue to come back to you both to share what we've been doing, but also to get your feedback on how we're doing. And I think with that, I will hand it over to the Child Infrastructure Fund.
Thank you, David. And thank you for this opportunity to share about the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, which I will also refer to as the CCIF. My name is Danae Gonzalez. I am the Business Systems Implementation Specialist at DELC, and my colleague Whitney and I are really excited to share about the CCIF application and the technical assistance supports for those who are interested in applying for the CCIF funding. Unfortunately, we might not be able to answer all of your questions this evening, but I do encourage you to post your questions in the chat box or the Q&A so that we can gather them into a frequently asked questions or FAQ document. And if you have very specific questions about your program or your individual plans for applying for funding, those can be addressed by reaching out to the technical assistance providers that we will introduce a little bit later on. Next slide, please. First, we just wanted to share a little bit of background information on how the Child Care Infrastructure Fund was established. In the 2023 legislative session, House Bill 3005 was passed, and this created the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, and $50 million in lottery bonds will be put into the fund in the next 2 years to support building and expanding childcare facilities in Oregon. $25 million in lottery bonds were sold in May of 2024 and will go into CCIF this year. And the remaining $25 million in lottery bonds will be available in the spring of 2025. The funds will be distributed by Business Oregon to eligible applicants through a very competitive application process. And so Business Oregon will be administering the application process and administering the funds for the CCIF. Senate Bill 5506 was also passed in the 2023 legislative session. And this bill requires the Department of Early Learning and Care to support the business technical assistance for childcare providers and programs to access CCIF. We will share more about the technical assistance supports for CCIF applicants later in this session, but first I'm going to have Whitney O'Connell talk about the CCIF application timeline and eligibility requirements. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Whitney O'Connell, and I am the Early Learning Business Support Coordinator here at DELC, and I'll be sharing some information with you about the Child Care Infrastructure Fund application and timeline. Funding for this grant is ongoing, and we expect to have multiple rounds each year for the foreseeable future. The first round will have $10 million in available funding to distribute. This first round of funding is set to open by the end of July, early August 2024. The application will be released from Business Oregon, who will also distribute the funding awards. You can apply for funding every time a new round opens. Each new funding round starts with an application period. You can apply for additional funding even if you have received funding in a previous round. We anticipate a lot of interest in this grant. Because of this, the application period will be open for 45 days. This will be a competitive application process. Submission of an application doesn't mean you will be selected for funding. If you don't get selected in the current round, you can always resubmit in a subsequent round. After the application period closes, we anticipate awarding funding to selected applicants in October 2024. Next slide, please. In this slide, you can see the different types of eligible programs. If you are one of these eligible programs, you must currently be providing childcare, or you are in the process of becoming licensed and have passed the background check if required. Applicants must agree to 1, remain open and serving children for the duration specified in your contract or continued use period. For awards between $20,000 and $49,999, the continued use period is a 3-year. For awards between $50,000 and $999,000, the continued use period is 5 years. And for awards between $500,000 to $2 million, the continued use period is 10 years. Planning project awards are not subject to the continued use requirement. 2, if required to be licensed by the Department of Early Learning and Care, maintain an active license at the time of the application and during the duration of the grant agreement. 3, if the applicant leases the property in which they are applying for funding, the property owner must be aware of and agree to the proposed project. If awarded, property owners must sign the contract alongside the leasee. 4, is headquartered in Oregon and has its principal operations in Oregon. 5, if required, be registered with the Oregon Secretary of State's office as a business with an active registration number. Next slide, please. The initial round of funding in 2024 will be prioritizing culturally specific programs and organizations. Business Oregon will provide a detailed application guideline, project checklist, and other resources to answer many of your questions on the Business Oregon website. Aside from the culturally specific programs and organizations, prioritization will be given to programs offering or expanding infant and toddler care, providing extended hour care, those located in childcare deserts, and program accepting subsidies. This is a statewide project, so the focus will be on distributing funding geographically with the goal of the funding projects in all 36 counties in Oregon. All types of childcare are encouraged to submit an application. Family childcare programs are welcomed and encouraged to apply. All funds must be spent within 3 years of the bond sale. So for example, the first bond sale happened in May of 2024. So for the first two funding rounds, funds must be spent by May of 2027. If you are unable to spend all of your award funds, you will need to return the remaining award funds to Business Oregon. Next slide, please. There are certain restrictions for how the project funds can be spent. Here are a few examples of eligible and ineligible projects. The focus of the Child Care Infrastructure Fund will be on permanent improvements or purchases of real property with the goal of increasing or preserving the number of child care slots available in Oregon. The application guidelines, which can be found on Business Oregon's website when the application is released, will include a more detailed list of allowable and unallowable grant fund expenditures. Next slide, please. There are 4 different types of projects you can apply for. Planning projects are essential to any successful project. If you aren't sure whether a particular project is feasible, you should apply for a planning project. This project will help fund your architectural or engineering designs. With these plans in place, a contractor will be able to finish your project. Once you know your project is feasible, you may apply for additional funding in a future round. Planning project awards can be up to $75,000. Minor repairs and renovation project funds can be used to expand or retain your current childcare offerings. Examples of these projects are roof replacement, ducted HVAC systems, such as furnaces and AC unit, and adding a new bathroom. These awards range from $20,000 to $100,000. New construction or major renovation project funds should be used for large-scale projects, such as remodeling a site, adding a new classroom, or the construction of a new child care center. These award funds can be used in conjunction with other grants to complete projects over $2 million. These awards range from $100,001 to $2 million. Real property acquisition funds can be used to purchase land, buildings, or accessory dwelling units to establish a child care facility that will not be used as a private domicile. An accessory dwelling unit for the purpose of this grant are secondary buildings that share the same lot but are not attached to the primary structure and are affixed to the land. If permitted by local zoning, they can have a kitchen and bathrooms. Funds for this type of project can also be used to do minor and major renovations as long as the total funding request does not exceed $2 million. This means if the building you want to purchase needs renovations, you can add the estimated cost to your funding application. The minimum award amount is $20,000 for all construction projects and real property purchases. All construction and remodeling projects must be done by a licensed contractor. In order to be good stewards of public funding, applicants are required to submit detailed project descriptions, bids from potential contracts, and other documentation. This can take time to assemble, and checklists are provided to help you gather the required documentation. When the application is released, Business Oregon will provide a scoring guide so you can see how your application will be scored. All award amounts under $100,000 will be distributed in one lump sum. Project awards over $100,000 will receive 80% of their award upon contract execution. The remaining 20% will be distributed as a reimbursement when you present your receipts to close out your project. When the project is completed, applicants will be required to show receipts documenting how they have spent their grant funds, pictures of their completed project, and a brief statement on how these funds have impacted their business. After submitting your application, do not make purchases or enter into any agreements to start work on your project until after you have been notified by Business Oregon via email that your application was selected for funding. You will not be reimbursed for funds you have spent before your project is selected for funding. Unfortunately, all award funds are considered taxable income. Please consult with a tax professional to find out what your tax liability will be if you are selected for funding. For more information, go to the Business Oregon website to sign up to get email updates and read past program updates. These resources, project checklists, frequently asked questions, and an informational handout created by Business Oregon are currently available on the Business Oregon's website in English, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Chinese. The application and grant materials will be available in Business Oregon's website when the application opens. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it to Danae.
Thanks, Whitney. I would encourage everyone to please continue to enter additional questions in the Q&A box, and we will keep answering those as they come in. And they can also be gathered and addressed in an updated frequently asked questions or FAQ, and also future email updates from Business Oregon, which you can sign up for on Business Oregon's website. If you can't find the answers or supports you are seeking in the FAQ or email updates, please use the technical assistance supports that we will discuss in the next few slides. There are many technical assistance supports that are available for childcare providers and programs who are wanting to access the Child Care Infrastructure Fund. These technical assistance supports are also available to those who are awarded funding from CCIF. These supports include, but are not limited to, assistance with completing the CCIF application, translation or interpretation support, business-specific support such as writing a business plan, creating a budget, business training or other business resources, one-on-one consultations for those that need more individualized support, a CCIF spending and implementation plan, and record keeping. Next slide, please. Since this is a competitive application process, Business Oregon and DELC staff will not be able to provide direct technical assistance to CCIF applicants. But we are excited to introduce you to the two nonprofit organizations that will be providing technical assistance for CCIF applicants and recipients. On the left side of your screen, you'll see Northwest Native Chamber. They're a regional nonprofit serving Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, and have demonstrated success providing TA to Native-owned business owners and entrepreneurs and all communities through an Indigenous approach to collaborative learning and partnership. On the right of your screen, you'll see First Children's Finance, which is a national nonprofit with demonstrated success providing TA to childcare businesses in multiple states, including the creation of an office here in Oregon. Their mission is to grow the supply and business sustainability of excellent childcare. Next slide, please. If you are interested in applying for the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, you can choose to work with one or both of the technical assistance providers to support you in the CCIF application process, in your business planning, training, consultation, and other resources you may need to support you in building or expanding your childcare program. Please contact these TA providers directly to access these supports. Since this will be a competitive application process, again, Business Oregon and DELC staff will not be able to provide technical assistance for potential applicants. Please keep in mind the application will only be open for 45 days once it's released, and it is important to reach out directly to these TA providers as soon as you can if you need support in meeting the funding requirements or completing the application. Next slide, please. If you still have questions, please go to Business Oregon's website to find these great resources that are available in multiple languages to help you answer your questions. If you can find the FAQ there, they have project checklist, they have an information handout and program updates, and you can sign up for their email list to get future program updates as well. If you have specific questions that have not been covered or you need individualized technical assistance, please reach out directly to the TA providers that we listed on the previous slide. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this information with you, and we hope that you will be encouraged to apply for CCIF and help build out childcare infrastructure in Oregon. Next slide.
Thank you, Danae and Whitney. I see we do have some questions coming through the Q&A box. I know you're working on gathering those, responding to them if you can, and sharing technical assistance information if you're not able to answer. So appreciate you being here tonight. We'll continue to monitor the Q&A box, and we'll also pull a report at the end of the session so that we can circle back with folks. We are ready to move on to agency and program updates. David, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. So this portion of the evening is really just reminders and opportunities for you all to engage with us, continue to engage with us. And coming up later this summer, there are going to be 3 different RACs or rulemaking advisory committees that you can apply for and participate. So first, we have employment-related daycare rules. These rules are going through just some kind of technical cleanup, no major changes, but making sure that the language is clear and reflects our current policies. There's also an inclusive partners program and ERDC rulemaking advisory committee. And as many of you know, the registered family and certified family rules are currently being revised, and we will have a RAC for that rule set as well. So for the first 2 opportunities, we know that the application will open on August 1st and close on August 23rd. And for the registered family and certified family rule revision RAC, we do not have the dates yet, but we know that they will launch in August. So if you have not subscribed to the childcare update newsletter, that is a great place to stay in the loop. And I will also put a link in the chat to our rulemaking page on the DELC website. And that's where you can check for applications and any other opportunities to engage around rulemaking. And David, you can go to the next slide. Next, we have a reminder about the Birth to 5 Literacy Grant opportunity. This is a grant that is available to current Early Childhood Equity Fund grantees or culturally specific organizations. Some communication has gone out about this as well in the Childcare Update newsletter. If you have questions about this grant, the single point of contact is Lori Nordeline, and Lori's email is on the bottom of this slide. This application is due by 5 p.m. on August 2nd. I'll also put a link to this in the chat. Next, we are excited to launch that the Child Care Licensing Division, or CCLD, has created a new inspection feedback form that can be found on our website. And this is an opportunity for you to share about a licensing visit or a CCLD visit and just give us feedback, which will help with our training and professional development opportunities for CCLD staff. It's available in 5 languages, and I will put that link in the chat. Says on the slide, but just a special note here, this is not the place to file a complaint about a particular CCLD staff person. If you do have a complaint or concern, we invite you to go to your regional manager or contact the customer service line at DELC. And beyond the CCLD specific feedback form, we are excited to announce that we will have DELC's first customer service satisfaction survey. So as a part of being our own agency, we are required to do a customer service survey every year. And this will be our first time launching a survey. So You will receive an email invitation. We will do reminders on our social media. This is another thing that will be in our childcare update newsletter. So be on the lookout for this survey launching in August. We are excited to hear feedback about your experience working with DELC across the agency, not just CCLD, but any other programs or services that you receive. I think this is our last update for this evening. We might end early tonight. ORO, or the Oregon Registry Online through OCCD at PSU, is currently running a workforce recognition payment program, and they wanted to make sure you all were aware of this opportunity. So providers are eligible to receive a $500 payment in 2024 and in 2025. So if you log into your My ORO account, you'll see the opportunity to apply. The requirements are just that you are working for at least 90 days at 10 hours a week in the calendar year, and that you're currently working in a licensed Oregon childcare facility or license exempt or recorded, or as a family friend or neighbor provider who is participating in the subsidy program ERDC. There's one more slide about this, David. So here's the timeline of the application process for this workforce recognition payment. So the application period is open right now through October 15th. Next, they'll respond to all the invitations. You'll have a request for information that needs to be resolved by November 15th, making sure that your payment is going where it should go. And then lastly, the payment distribution will be completed by November 15th within 45 business days of that date. So contact information at the bottom of the slide if you have any questions, but if you have an Oregon Registry Online account, you can log in and you should receive a pop-up kind of prompting you to apply. Into the next slide, David. Thank you. So the childcare update newsletter that I've mentioned a few times, I'll put that in the chat as well. It's really the best place to keep in touch with us. We have a newsletter that goes out about every 2 weeks. Great place to stay in the loop with everything happening, as well as following us on social media and joining us for these information sessions. So we appreciate you making the time to be here. At the end of the meeting, you'll receive a pop-up with a survey about this information session. We welcome your feedback and really thank you for being here after a long, hot day in most of the state. Thank you.